All right, Andrew Easton with the ESUCC. I'm so grateful to Heather Nebeziak of Ord Public Schools for joining us to talk a little bit about some ideas for addressing unfinished learning. When you talk about students who maybe have missed some time over the course of this pandemic, there is the concern about maybe some of those key pieces of information or skills that they were not able to pick up that are imperative for their fluid progress moving forward. And now maybe it's an entire school year or a new semester, that they're advancing into with they're a little bit behind. And so trying to be cognizant of and intentional about the way in which we address that is just really important. And so Heather, thank you so much for joining us to have a conversation around this. And we look forward to just getting a few ideas to maybe help us be a little bit more supportive in those spaces.
Absolutely. Well, I'm happy to be here to visit about this. I think it's really important that as our teachers welcomed our kids back into school in August, for most of our places, we were able to have some in-person learning happening again. And whether it's remote learning, in-person learning, combination of both, there are potentials for some learning gaps that have occurred just through the closure in the spring or through sporadic attendance of our students in the fall, or even being able to engage with them in that remote setting. And so it's important that as educational leaders in school districts, we make sure our teachers have the tools that they need to address that unfinished learning. Without a doubt, our teachers are trained, and in our district and other districts as well, that they know how to know where our kids are at. We have NWA MAP scores, we have lots of screeners, and most schools have intervention plans in place. So it's using those tools together on how we're able to meet those needs of our students. But it's important to kind of look at what type of learning gaps are maybe there so that we can get those best tools in place. When working with our teachers, we kind of tend to look at, are there some short-term gaps that may have occurred because the student is trying to do remote learning and is challenged with some of those components, and they're just not in the classroom as much as they had been in the fall or connecting with the teacher in the same way. And so the teachers identified some of those short-term gaps. Tools that will help those short-term gaps would be just really extended time is one of it. Communication to meet the kids where they're at and what's needed. And there's some of that extra support in the short-term capacity. And then there are some of our bigger concerns, and that might be that extended gaps. And those extended gaps can go all the way back into the closure in the spring. It could also be just due to having at-risk kids that are at risk of failure due to other environmental factors. And so that notable learning loss that may be attributed to some of those attended gaps, that has to be addressed. Most schools have that intervention plan in place, but it may look different as the sense of urgency and pacing that our teachers are feeling because they just don't have that time right now to connect with our kids. And it's important that educational leaders across the state listen to their teachers in this capacity. I really feel like the teachers are the ones that have the boots on the ground and know what our kids need, and then it's obligation of the district to provide those supports.
And I love so much about how that conversation started in data, and I think that that's just a critical component because that's how you're going to be able to first measure and then respond to. And I think those are two different steps in that process.
Absolutely. That data component is huge. And when you compare your data, we here are just starting to see our winter MAP scores come back to us. And we fortunately are not experiencing a large slide, a large component of unfinished learning. But I attribute that to the teachers being able to know where their kids are at. From the get-go, they did not come in and say, well, here's where you should be in August of third grade. It was, here's where you are in August of third grade. Now let me help you and meet your needs. And I think that that is a mind shift, but it's a good mind shift to happen. Remote learning has maybe helped us put that to the forefront of a conversation, but I feel like that should be happening all the time. not just during
Mhm.
the pandemic, but we get so caught up sometimes in the curriculum guides and the pacing guides and the assessment scores, and letting our data take us where we need to go is a powerful process. But so many times we just look at our data, we don't lean on our data. And now I feel like is the time to really lean on our data to address that unfinished learning.
Absolutely. And so thanks for supporting our thinking on this really important topic. For additional support, there's also resources on this site, on the teacher-facing site that is parallel to this. And so if you're looking to support your classroom practitioners, you can find the link to that on the main page of this administrative page. But really, as you said, it's just about collaboration, conversation, intentionality, using our data to step into those spaces. And so thank you, Heather, so much for your leadership through this conversation and giving us a few things to think about.
Absolutely.